Hello, boys and ghouls. Welcome to a very special interview episode of Dads from the Crypt. My name is Jason, and today I'm joined by Greg Nicotero and John Harrison, the masterminds behind Shudder's Crypt Show. Welcome to the show, guys.
Woo!
Thanks for
Thanks.
having us.
Yes. John, it's always a pleasure to have you
You've
on.
got
How are
Greg.
you?
He's the real mastermind behind Creep Show. I'm just a hired hand.
Well, they hire you a lot. We'll get to that in just a moment. But Greg, this is your first time on Dads from the Crypt, so I want to hear your origin story, where you're from, what were
Okay.
your movie influences growing up, and how you got into makeup and effects.
Well, I grew up in Pittsburgh and in the North Hills. And, because of the pedigree of Bill Cardill and Chiller Theater and my parents' love for horror movies, that was it. I watched Chiller Theater. I read Famous Monsters magazine. Lo and behold, I discovered when I was about 13 that there was this guy named George Romero who made movies in Pittsburgh. Night of the Living Dead obviously was made in the late 60s. And this was before Dawn of the Dead had come out. So it was one of those unique scenarios where you didn't, Tom Savini has the same story. He found out that he didn't have to go to Hollywood to make movies, that he could make movies in his hometown. And I ironically met George on a family vacation to Rome when he was there meeting with Dario about Dawn of the Dead. And we were at a restaurant, and I was like, holy shit, that's George Romero. And went over and said hello to him. And he was kind of blown away that this 15-year-old kid from Pittsburgh is like coming up to him at a restaurant in Rome. And George was always, once you're in the family, he was like, you should come down to the office on Fort Pitt Boulevard and come visit. And so he kind of invited me into the fold, like almost instantly. And, my fascination continued to grow. I think once I knew George, I met Tom when they were shooting Creep Show and was invited to visit the set quite often. And that's where John was there. And so by the time Day of the Dead comes around in 1984, the irony was they had offered me a job on Creep Show to be a production assistant. And I was just about ready to go away to college to study pre-med. So I said, yeah, it would be great, but I don't think I could do it. I'm supposed to be a doctor. I gotta go to school. And then, we stayed in touch. I got to be really good friends with Tom. So that kind of seemed to be a no-brainer. And then in 84, Day of the Dead pops up, and it's the same conversation. Hey, we got Day of the Dead. Do you want a job as a PA? And this time I didn't say no. I said, I want to be Tom's assistant. And, at that point, they loved the idea of having somebody manage Tom because it was a big show. Day of the Dead had a lot of work, more than Tom had ever done before. And they loved the idea that I would be the guy interacting with production. I would be the guy hiring the crew, ordering the supplies, and sort of keep Tom free to do what Tom does so well, which is come up with these creative gags. So I kind of, ran the department for him. That's when John and I met and fell in love officially. And, it was, I never went back. The intention always was, yeah, I'm going to take a semester off of school. I'm going to do this movie and then I'm going to go back and be a doctor. And that just, 800 movies and 40 years later, I still have never gone back to school. So that's the history, and I owe everything to George. I owe everything to Tom. I owe a lot to John and the crew of Day of the Dead because they welcomed me into the family, and that's one of the big reasons why John and I continue to collaborate after 4 decades is because we are family. I know I can rely on him. As soon as Creepshow came up for me, there was no doubt that I wanted John to be a part of it in whatever capacity he wanted to be. I wanted him to write. I wanted him to direct. It just Savini was there, Rick Catazone was there. I feel like I've spent a lot of my career repaying George's goodwill by continuing his legacy. And this is a great opportunity. So there you go. That was quick too. That was only like 5 minutes. That could have
There
gone
you
for an
go.
hour.
How did you become involved with Shudder's Creep Show?
Well,
At what
another
point?
really crazy story, because when I was younger, I had a video cam. I had one of those old beta cameras that you stick the tape in and you can carry around. And
Mhm.
I had a poster for Creepshow on the wall in my office, in my basement in Pittsburgh. And my brother found a video that I was filming that said to my parents, saying, "Mom, Dad, one day you're going to see my name on that poster." And it was a Creepshow poster. So I was doing publicity in Australia, and I was like, I need a book to read so that I can, on the plane, I got like a 19-hour flight. So I'm sitting with my iPad, the plane's getting ready to take off, and this book pops up called Nights of the Living Dead. And I'm like, what the hell is this, Nights of the Living Dead? So I look at it, and it's like stories by different authors that all take place the same night as Night of the Living Dead took place. And I went, oh my God,
Mm.
that's fucking awesome. So I downloaded the book, and there was one story written by a guy named Craig Engler called Dead Girl Named Sue that I fell in love with. And I thought, you know what? I'm between seasons on Walking Dead. I'd love to go shoot this as a short film. Like, I wanted to make it. So we tracked him down, and turns out he was the president of Shudder, and was like, "Wait a minute, well, why are you asking me about this story?" I said, "Because I love it, and I think it's really cool, and it's Romero, and I love the vibe and the feel for it." And literally, like, I get a phone call from his partner named Stan Spry saying, "Oh, well, we're talking about resurrecting Creepshow. You have a deal at AMC. We need a creative. We need somebody who can run the show. What do you think?" And I'm like, "Creep Show, like my Creep Show, like Um, and so, interestingly enough, we had pitched it to AMC because we wanted it to be on AMC, and AMC didn't want to pay for it, so it ended up on Shudder, at a lesser budget, of course, which they still to this day continue to be. Oh, we should have just taken Creepshow when we had the chance. So so we dove in, and that was kind of it. Then it was all about me kind of reaching out to everybody and anybody that I could to get season one going. I reached out to Steve King. I reached out to Joe Hill. Steve was like, "I have the perfect story for you. I have the perfect story." He gives me Survivor type, as the first story for Creepshow, which of course we could have never afforded to do because it's on an island in the middle of the ocean. But Steve was on board. Joe Hill was on board. We got a bunch of really great actors. We got Adrian back. We got Tobin. We got Giancarlo Esposito. I was calling everybody, all my friends, like literally texting everybody that I knew, because I'm like, who knows if I'm going to get another season or another chance. So John came and directed. I directed. Tom Savini directed. Rob Schraub directed. John, you did two, I think, or just one. I can't remember.
So yeah, Greg asked me. I came down to do two, Greg, in the first season, and then you asked me to, or two stories in one episode, and then you said, "I've got these other two. Can you stay?" And we did those. But interestingly enough, as we went in through the next couple of seasons, I got a chance to do the very story that Greg was just talking about. I knew Craig Engler from the sci-fi days when he was at sci-fi and I was doing the Dune miniseries. And I had actually seen him in New York, and he had told me, "We're trying to get Greg to do a new Creepshow series. Would you be interested?" I said, "Just sign me up. I'm there whenever he says." And I forget which season it was, Greg, you said, "Well, I want to do Dead Girl Named Sue." And we did it. It was one of the best episodes that I did. I mean, I am so proud of that episode because we did it in black and white. We did it as if it were the same time frame
Yeah.
that George did Night of the Living Dead.
Mm.
And it turned out great. We had a great cast. Rob Draper, who was the cinematographer, did a beautiful job on the look of it. So ironically, it just all came full circle because then I was working with Craig Engler again on a
Well, it's funny
story
because
that Greg had found that started the whole thing out.
Craig didn't want us to do that story in season 1. I think he felt a little awkward
Right.
about the fact that we were putting, as the head of the studio, one of his stories in. I think he felt a little uncomfortable about that. So we didn't do it on season 1. But look, it was really, I had no idea what I was getting myself into when we did Creepshow. I had been working for 10 years on Walking Dead, and you have standing sets and you have reoccurring cast, and the idea that we went in with the concept of shooting 2 stories per episode at 3.5 days each story. And every 3.5 days, you'd have a new cast, a new script, new locations. It was so freaking ambitious. And I think we really were just like, it existed out of sheer force of will more than anything else. Because we got there and our line producer was like, they should shut this. Like the first week, the line producer said, "You're never going to have enough money to make the show. They should just shut it down now. We shouldn't even, don't even bother." And so I'm like, well, gee, this is going to be fun. The line producer doesn't even want to make the show. And we found our way through it. It was really long. I was rewriting a lot of the scripts while we were in prep to make sure that the scripts fit into the window. I hired a lot of my Walking Dead crew because they were loyal and they were willing to do anything that we needed to do to get the show done. And it was great. It was like riding a bucking bronco.
Now, let me ask, what was the thinking behind doing the 2 stories per episode? Was that
I
financial reason
wanted
or
to
creative reason?
preserve the anthology feel.
Mm-hmm.
I think originally I went into it kind of thinking about Night Gallery, because I remember there was Night Gallery episodes where they would have one story that was one shot. Like I'll never forget, it was like there was one Night Gallery episode. There was one shot, and it's like a baby's crying, and the baby's crying, and then the parents come in and they bring the baby bottle in, and they're like, "Oh, he's so cute," and the baby won't stop crying. They give him the baby, and then they cut to the crib, and it's Frankenstein in the crib, and the Frankenstein says, "Thanks, Daddy," and drinks the bottle, and then breaks the crib. That was it. It was like 2 shots. And I thought, a lot of those comic books and things, the original thought was, let's do 3 little vignettes per episode, and one of them could be a 30-second or a minute long little thing. I just thought it would be kind of fun, and I wanted really it to be like you're reading a comic book and you get the first story and the pages blow open. I wanted it to be like the original movie. So that was the plan and the intent. And we had a lot of we had great stories. Joe Lansdale gave us a story. Joe Hill. We had David Bruckner directed and Roxanne Benjamin directed. We had a lot of really great people in season 1 that all came in. And ironically enough, I remember David Bruckner saying to me after the fact, he was like, "Dude, I learned so much on that shooting Creepshow with you." When we were doing it, he it was a little bit like, a lot of the directors that come off of independent filmmaking, they don't really, sometimes they don't understand what it's like to sort of collaborate with, you're dealing with a budget, you're dealing with time frame. If it's independent, you can kind of do whatever you want. Yeah, let's go do this today and do this today. And it was a really challenging for a couple of the directors, and I remember after the fact they were like, it was like the greatest. It was a really great experience because it really made me understand um, different elements of filmmaking that they hadn't been exposed to yet. The beauty for John was John's a fucking pro. You know, John's directed a ton of stuff, and I could count on him. You know, I never went to set. I never looked at John like, I don't know. And I gave him episodes that he didn't even want, and he's like, dude, how the fuck am I going to make a scary episode out of a dollhouse? What the fuck are you giving me this? He didn't want it, and it turned out to be probably the best received episode. You know, of course, I gave him Kaylee Fleming, who's a rock star and a half. But John looked at me like, Greg, I don't know, like why do you want me to direct this? And I was like, well, somebody has to.
No,
I said, John, it'll be great. You'll find it. I promise you. And the minute you turn the camera on Kaylee, all your work is done because she is that good of an actress. And
no,
so,
that
and
that is one of
ironically, we
the.
led with that episode. That was our first. I think that one and Gray Matter were
Mhm.
the first two episodes that we aired, and it was a Stephen King one, and then it was that one, and people fucking loved it. People went crazy for it, um, and I was really grateful. I'm still grateful for the response the show gets. Nobody knows it's out there because Shudder does really not much to promote it. But people, I would say 99% of the people that talk to about the show are like, when are you doing more? We love it. It's so much fun. You've captured the spirit of what it's like to do those, sort of 70s kind of vibe. You know, you got a different monster in each show. There's glee, there's joy. It's really something that it's unlike anything else that's on TV. And I'm very proud of the fact that I feel like we sort of led that horror anthology wave that came out. And then that we're the only ones that sort of survived the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah, I've talked about it before, but The House of the Head is just one of the most tense episodes of TV I've ever seen. And it's so simplistic, but so nerve wracking, especially with a daughter approximately the same age. It just tickles that fear, that parental fear reflex in me. And I remember this came out when I guess there was after they were born, but they were still, babies. So it wasn't like that relating. It still freaked me out back then. And, horror fan, I've seen many, many, many things. And that's still one of the most tense episodes.
Well,
No,
the funny thing about that was, when we were developing all the scripts, it was really one of the first times for me that I would read the short story and then wrestle with the writers, like find the best story and make sure that it's affordable. And I remember calling Josh one day. It was before we started production, and saying, "Hey, what if at the end of the script she grabs the head and pulls it out of the house and throws it into her bedroom, and then when she finds it, it's full size head."
Oh,
And he was
yeah.
so mad because he hadn't thought of it. He's like, "Why is that not in the story? That should have been in the short story. That's such a great idea." So it was a really unique opportunity, um, because of my pedigree. I mean, look, I've spent my career sort of developing this kind of stuff, finding the scares. How do you make something scary? What, what what element is missing that the audience will have a visceral reaction to? The blood and the gore is the easy part.
Mhm.
And the years of experience I have creating moments, like we've been sort of redoing our K&B portfolio lately, and went through fucking 35 years of stuff, and one page has Casino, Misery, and Reservoir Dogs. And I put all those on one page because I thought those were the gags that we built that emptied the theaters. The people walked out. Reservoir Dogs, they walked out. The Head and the Vice on Casino, they walked out. And the Ankle Break in Misery. So having part of that is my history of somebody who was instrumental in designing those with people like Quentin and with people like Martin Scorsese and Rob Reiner, and understanding that this was now a chance for me to do it for myself on my show. So to find the scares, and there was the last day of shooting, I'll never forget this. I forget what you were doing, John. I think we were like, it was like one of those frantic, it's the last day of shooting. Here's a list of all the shots we need from every episode. And it's like a close up of a hand opening a door or this or that. And I was in the corner. I was in the corner. No. This was season 1. I was over in the corner with the house shooting little pickup pieces of the figures reacting to the cop and then moving them a little bit, and then the cops decapitated and they're reacting, and it was all those little pieces. So it just was, I think, also because of my experience, the one thing that, and then I'll stop and let John talk. The one thing that I have that not a lot of other filmmakers have is I've been on set for 40 years. Like, I grew up and came into the industry. I wasn't a writer. I wasn't somebody who worked in an office and then found my way onto set. I began my career on set, and I stood next to people like George and Toby Hooper and John Carpenter and Wes Craven, and like the greatest filmmakers of our generation. I've had the opportunity to collaborate with. So for me, that's been the greatest film school opportunity that you can have, and that I do think that that's what sets me aside from a lot of other people, is my understanding of how a set works, my understanding of effects and drama, and the fact that I would be in the makeup trailer with the actors at the beginning, and I knew how to get the actors to trust me. If you have an actor that trusts you, then you're golden. And I was able to do that. So that's, and then I just surround myself with people like John and Rob Draper and Amy and my team. And Creepshow became something really special.
How do you decide how to pair the episodes and what sequence to pair them
Well,
in?
usually when we shoot them, we pair them from a production standpoint. We pair them whichever one is the easiest to shoot. Once we have them shot and we edit them together, then we decide after they're edited which ones we want to lead with. Obviously, we want to lead with our stronger episodes, and then we like to end with our stronger episodes as well. So a lot of times, like for season 4, we opened with Smile, which was one that John directed. And then the other one was 20 Minutes with Cassandra, which was one that I directed with Samantha Sloyan and Ruth Codd.
Really
And
good.
I thought that those two stories, again, Creepshow is so different. And I think what surprises people about it is there's a lot of my sensibilities in the show. Like, they don't all have to be gory. They don't have to all be outrageous, but I want them to be entertaining, and I want to
Mm-hmm.
take the audience on a different journey. Every story has to be different. That's one of the successes of the show. So
Absolutely.
when you watch something like Cassandra in 20 minutes, um, you have no idea where that story's going. And the performances were so good. And that literally came out of me watching Midnight Mass and calling Jamie Flanagan and saying, I need you to write an episode of Creepshow for me. And he was like, I don't have anything for you. I'm sorry. I mean, I really appreciate you thinking of me. And then a half an hour later, he said, no, actually, maybe I think I might have something for you. And I fell in love with the story. And that, and so you get a different experience every time you watch an episode.
That's the
Yeah.
beauty of an anthology series, and
Mhm.
and fortunately, Greg has curated stories that aren't all one thing. They aren't all monster stories.
Mhm.
They all aren't gore stories. There's plenty of that, and the ones that I've had an opportunity to do have been really a lot of fun to do because that goes way back to the original stuff with George. But I've also had a chance to do the ones that are really psychological horror, which is what Smile is, and to some extent what 20 Minutes with Cassandra is, because it's really about her and her relationship to this thing. I mean, in the middle of this story, there's like what, Greg, like about a 5-minute dialogue scene where the two of them are just sitting there talking to each other
On
and
the
nothing's
couch.
going on, and
Yeah.
it's like, wait a minute, this is a Creep Show episode.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah.
This girl is sitting with a monster and just like bearing her soul, and he's bearing his soul. It's different. It's cool.
Yeah, one of my favorites from season one, because I definitely want to get you guys back to talk about the other seasons when we go through them, but is a Night of the Paw, Monkey Paw, with Bruce Davison is just amazing.
That was so
Again,
much fun to do.
yeah,
Well,
and that one just like
that came
tears
because
your heart.
John Esposito, who again is part of the family.
Yep.
Mhm.
I've known John, God, since after Day of the Dead, and he had that script for a long, long time. And when Creepshow got going, I literally called him and said, "I want to do your Monkey's Paw script." I said, I really want I want to make that episode. It's pure Creepshow. It's
Mhm.
really got that morality. It's got the revenge. It's got the bad guy comeuppance aspect of it. Everything about it, I felt, and too, I think because that was one of the first ones that we shot, that gave me when John was prepping it, I remember going to John and saying, "Look, we can't shoot the car crash. We can't shoot this. We can't shoot
Mhm.
that. So I'm going to have comic book pages drawn that will illustrate a lot of that. Even when Bruce gets to the cemetery, we can cut to comic book pages in between to fill out elements that we can't shoot because we don't have the time or the money." So
Yeah, it was great.
it saved us, like it
Mhm.
saved us, and we were being clever about it and smart about it. So doing that when somebody would come in and say, "Look, it's going to take us half a night to shoot a car crash when the car goes off the cliff," and I'm like, "Well, we don't have a half a night to do that." So I hired Ron Franz and Rick Catazone in Pittsburgh, who worked on the original Creep Show, and Ron used to draw for all those comic book those old school comics, and I had them draw it. And then we did fun sound design, and we did the sound design, and then it made it feel like a comic book come to life.
Yeah, that's
Well,
the
and what
genius.
was great about it is that it was totally consistent with the original Creep Show. I mean,
Mhm.
you completely honored it, Greg, by making it, and the scream panels and the other thing, enough money to do the
Yeah,
graveyard. We had to create that almost as a surreal.
yeah.
Yeah, as a viewer, I love it because yeah, it ties it really into the show, and also the use of like the splash colors
Mm-hmm.
really tied it into the movie. And yeah, that graveyard, yeah, it looks fake as hell, but we love that. We love that it just fits the vibe of it, the DIY and the working with the budget. Right. So it's one of those like necessity worked out in both ways where you have to do something on the cheap and make it even better.
Well, look,
Inadvertent.
that's the way filmmaking is. It's
Mhm.
like the famous story when they were shooting Jaws and the shark didn't work, and someone's like, "Yeah, just
Yeah.
tow that yellow barrel from there to there, and we'll let the audience know that the shark is near and it's underneath." You have to be clever and you have to be ingenious. And my experiences on the various movies that I've worked on really allowed me to sort of troubleshoot problems. Oh, we can't do that? Shit. All right, well, let's do this. And that was,
Mhm.
really, that was most of my job. And so we finished season 1. I feel like when we got to season 2 and 3 that we shot back to back, I really could breathe a little bit because as much of a bucking bronco as season 1 was, and I felt like I was holding on for dear life. Now we had done it, and the show was a success, and everything that I had hoped for. So when we got to season 2, I feel like I lightened up a little bit, and I was a little freer. We did when we did Shapeshifters Anonymous, which is a completely out there episode. It's so random and it's so wild. But I had so much fun writing and directing that episode because it was outrageous in a way that like Jordy Verrill was outrageous, and that some of the stories um, just needed to be fun. So I read that story and just went, okay, this should be it. And we ended up releasing it as a Christmas special, which I thought was brilliant. But I think I would definitely say for season 2 and 3, I definitely had a lot more fun. The public television of the dead and Night of Living Late Show,
Oh, yeah.
and those episodes were so me. Those episodes, the Sam Raimi one and the George Romero one, and the stuff that I had directed, and then we got into Queen Bee, which was sort of my John Carpenter spooky hospital alien movie, which I was able to channel my John Carpenter. So I feel like when we got into seasons 2 and 3, I really could breathe, and the episodes really show to me a lot more confidence in what the show is intended to be.
Yeah, one of my favorites from the first season that's really off the wall is the finger.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just you don't know where it's going. The creature is so well done. It's kind of adorable but vicious in the same way. Like I'd want that as a pet. I would totally hang out with that guy.
Well, he's in my office. Look, and DJ who starred in it,
Mm-hmm.
it was really interesting because we brought him in. He got there like 2 days before, and we really had a great time together. And he actually pulled me aside and said, he said, this industry's rough. He said, this industry's really rough. And there was a moment when I was kind of about to throw in the towel. And then he said, then I came down here and I had this opportunity to collaborate with you. And I watched you and your crew, and I saw how much passion you had for it. He said it really rejuvenated my love for the business. And that was like probably one of the nicest compliments that I've ever gotten, because we were having a good time, and it was basically him in the whole episode. There's nobody else, him and the monster. And I did some stop motion in that episode, and then we had the creature that we had rod puppets, and we were erasing the rods, and and I actually wanted to do a sequel. We had a sequel that we might do if we ever do another season. We had a sequel to The Finger that's like E.T., where there's like two kids and their parents are getting divorced, and the kids are in the back seat of the car, and they hear a thump, and the car pulls into the garage, and the kids get out, and Bob has been hit by the car, and they take him into the garage and they nurse him back to health. So it's like E.T., but the parents are getting divorced and they're really nasty, and so crazy
Oh,
stuff.
I
So
love
I
that.
love the idea of us to, who knows. That was my ET meets Bob version.
Yeah, I think we call them the albino xenomorph.
he,
But cuddly.
he did have that little bit of that vibe. It's interesting. I found an artist online who had a design of a creature that was very similar to that. So I reached out to him and said, "Look, I love this design. I want to license it from you." And we gave him a credit on the show, and we paid him some money, and we sort of took some liberties in regards to what we ultimately wanted it to be. But it could have been easy. I could have just said, there it is, let's just do it." But I being very respectful of other artists, I wanted to give him credit where credit was due for that. And it was fun. We had a great time. And DJ was so game for anything and everything, and we really had a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He sells it. I've actually for a while thought he was a very underrated actor. I was in college kind of when his like sex comedies were kind of coming out, And then I've seen him. I've watched a lot of his other roles going forward from that, and like, wow, this guy actually has a lot of good range. I want
Yeah,
to see him more. And he was in the Cabinet of Curiosities in the role, so I think I'd love to see him do more in this genre.
yeah,
I
I
think
would
he can
too.
be
Well,
really
maybe we'll
well.
put him in more stuff because he's super talented.
Now, were you censored at all by Shudder any times, or they give you free reign?
Um, I don't really remember any instances where, I think because we had to provide linear, oh, we lost John again. Because we had to provide linear output for AMC as well, that there were
Mm,
instances where we did have to trim some stuff that was going to air on the network. But um, I don't really believe that there were any instances that I objected to, like, oh, this is bullshit. What do you guys?
mhm.
Um, they were pretty, Shutter. I think Shutter wants to push the envelope,
Right.
so they don't really mind. It's just a matter of the stuff that's trimmed when it airs on the AMC.
Yeah, the
Mhm.
only thing that I've noticed, Greg, about the AMC thing, which is unavoidable, is that they've got to make room for the commercials. And
Mhm.
so sometimes the stories have, and I've always objected to this, there's nothing you can do about it, but when you take something that was not conceived for television with the natural breaks written in, the people that make those decisions, and I've had Clive Barker's Book of Blood as a film that I did a few years ago, and it was sold to Sci-Fi, and the television version is denuded. It's neutral a little bit.
It's tricky because sometimes even if there is a natural break, then you have an act that's only 3 minutes,
Yeah,
and it's like
yeah.
you have to. You're sort of, your hand is kind of forced a little bit as to where you actually
Hey,
need
that AMC is running Creepshow.
to put your brakes. But look, I prefer watching things without
Mm.
commercials anyway because it's
Yeah.
that's the benefit of streaming, is because you're not interrupted with Ozempic or Sky Rizzy commercials every 5 frickin' seconds. Look, the nice thing about season 4 is that they paired it with Daryl Dixon, um, but still people don't know. They don't really know much about the show. The show is still kind of a hidden gem. Well, they're doing, yeah, it's the
Mm.
um, halfway to Halloween sort of thing that they're doing with Shutter.
Yeah,
But
I mean, hopefully people come across it on AMC and they go, "Oh, what's a Shutter thing? Let me go watch the unadulterated episodes over there and all the
well,
other good stuff."
I mean, look,
That's such a good
we
value.
really, the first season really did help put Shutter on the map,
Hmm.
and
Definitely.
their marching orders for us was, well, we need to get more subscribers. And I said, well, look, everybody that watched Creepshow that signed up, they're going to come back. And, it's always about like, how do we get more subscribers? How do we, but asking that and then cutting our budget. So it's like you have less money. So we can't bring in the talent that people would want to see on the show. So it's challenging. It's always challenging. But like the show, it's a great show. So
All right, I've got a couple quick questions from some audience members wanted me to ask. How did you feel about the parody that South Park did? I wasn't familiar with this, but they said in 2019, South Park did a parody of Creepshow. Have you seen that?
no, I don't even know.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll find it and maybe we'll get a response later on. And then also, I don't know if this is true or not, but there's a rumor for a Marilyn Manson episode that was scrapped. Is
Yes,
there any truth to that?
there is truth to that. We shot an episode. It was one that John directed. The episode was shot. The episode was in post production. I was actually working on John's cut, and then there was some untrue allegations about Manson that have since been proven to be a lie. And the episode was put on the shelf.
Mhm. Would there be any way to get that either made or adapted in some other way? or is it just kind of in the vault forever?
Well, I wouldn't say never. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I know that the episode wasn't finished. There was
Okay.
still a lot of visual effects and work to be done on it. So
All right, and then
not sure.
have you have you considered going back to some of like the original episodes, such as the Crate, and kind of other updating or doing sequels or more direct referentials? So we see little bits here and there referencing,
Here's the
but
problem with that. The rights are so convoluted.
mm,
The rights are really convoluted because the original movie was produced by Salah Hassanein and or financed by Salah. Richard Rubenstein produced, and then Warner Brothers bought it. And so we actually, during season 2, Matt Vane and I actually developed and wrote a sequel to The Crate. And it was Hal Holbrook was still alive, and he lived in a nursing home outside of Atlanta. So we were going to actually shoot with Hal Holbrook. He was down
wow.
for it. And we had the script written, and it was a really great story about the fact that he's in this assisted living facility, and there's this one character that's bullying him. And at one point he says, "You better be careful what you do, because I'm not going to let you get away with it." And he's like, "Oh, really? What are you going to do about it?" And he tells him how he got rid of his wife because he found this creature, and that the creature was thrown into this quarry. So the guy goes to the quarry, and lo and behold, finds that the crate had been dragged out of the quarry by the creature into a cave. So anyway, we had it all written, and it was done. I still have the script. And Stan Spry came back and said, "We can't find a clean chain of title to the story." So, and we had already spent the money to write the script.
Wow.
And Matt and I were really, really excited about it. And I thought it was really cool, and we were going to get Hal. And the rights to, it's like you can't touch any of those original stories, because if you do,
Mhm.
then it becomes too convoluted with who has the rights to what.
So you have the rights to the creature, the creep, at the very least.
Yeah.
And the creep show name, I guess nothing of the stories per se.
No, it was too
Mm.
convoluted. We'll try to get elements in there. I did the one episode with all the giant bugs, and like the one
Mhm.
with Josh in it, but and Keith David. I can't remember the name of it right now, and Ashley Lawrence. Um, but we try to find elements to sort of pay tribute to the original Creep Show. I
Yeah.
have that. I have the little ashtray right here. Yeah, hold on. I have it right here, and the little crate that we put in the attic.
No, there we go.
So this is
Yeah.
the one that was in the attic, and then look, there's the ashtray right on top.
Yeah. That's amazing.
That was Lucas Gottfried, who back then was our prop master, and he's been with me on Walking Dead for years, and he really him and Renee, they did a great job on all the props for the show. And then makeup effects wise, I had Jake Garber and Gino Cardinale that have been with me for 25 years, 30 years.
Have you talked to Stephen King about maybe doing a spoof on his famous performance?
No, we haven't. But we talk about Jordy Verrill a lot, because
Yeah.
the Jordy Verrill episode is so sort of out of character for what you expect from Stephen King George Romero collaboration,
Hmm.
but understanding, like I do, the intention of the EC Comics and how outlandish the stories are. You know, it makes sense. But no, we never really got that far.
Yeah, you guys might get a kick out of this. First time I ever saw a Creep show, I was just browsing TV, network TV, and I came in like in the middle of it. So I remember I came in the middle of the Geordie episode, and it freaked me out seeing this guy being consumed by this green moss and shooting himself in the head. And then there was a commercial break, and then they did the Tide You Over episode. And again, I'm like, this is way over my head as a kid. And then they cut to commercial break after the beach scene. And I didn't know for years later there was more to the segment where they come back as ghouls.
Oh,
Oh wow.
when they come back and get Leslie Nielsen. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
exactly. And
When
also,
they
I
can,
only knew Leslie Nielsen from like Naked Guns. I had no clue that he'd ever been like a serious
yeah.
actor. Like it freaked me. It just totally messed with my head again because of the commercials. I watched it. I didn't know that there was more to it until I came back to it later. So those TV commercials strike again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John, were you
Well,
the first? John, were you the first AD on that movie?
I was, which was kind of an amazing story in itself because I'm sitting at home. We knew George. My partners and I had a small film production company in the Berg. And of course, once you started down that path, you were inevitably going to encounter George. And we called him up. This is a great story about George Romero. I'm sitting in my office, and my partner Dusty Nelson then had gotten a deal to do all these sports documentaries, and I called him to just offer our services in case he needed anything. I figured a secretary would answer, I'd get on the call sheet, and Pat Buba, my other partner, becoming his editor. And one day I'm sitting at home and I get a call from Richard Rubenstein who says, "Look, George really doesn't like the sheet was just tell everybody to show up at 7 o'clock in the morning and we'll figure out what we're going to shoot."
All right. Well, we're almost out of time. So, Greg, John's got to answer this question many times. So I'll put you on the spot for this one. We're dads from the Crypt. We give dad advice and mentor advice all the time. So our formal end of interview episode, what mentor fatherly advice would you like to give our audience? It could be about filmmaking, about being a good person.
Well, if you want it to be about filmmaking, I would say really embrace the classics. You got to be real careful. A lot of the stuff that's being made today, and I'm not saying it's bad because there's great stuff. Talk to Me was great. When Evil Lurks was great, but a lot of stuff that's being done today just feels like it's a carbon copy or a clone of something else that's been done.
Mm-hmm.
I am a huge fan of the classics, and I think that that's where everything started from. And I would just say it will make you a better filmmaker to pay respect to the classics and really understand that if you're going to make a movie, you have to have a great script, and your actors, you have to believe your actors, because you can have the greatest monster in the world, but it's the shot of the actor's face reacting to the monster that is what's terrifying. If you imagine the, you know, shot from Psycho of her seeing Norman Bates coming at her and putting her hand up over her mouth, or Dee Wallace watching the werewolf transformation in The Howling. That's where the terror really starts. It's from watching how somebody else reacts, because as a viewer, we put ourselves into that person's perspective. So really understand that when you're crafting the scare in your movie, that it's all about the person in the room and how you identify with them.
Yeah, I think it's the 45th anniversary of Alien is coming up. And yeah, the reactions to the alien in that movie are so spectacular, especially the chest burster scene.
Yeah.
That they hadn't seen it before they shot it, and they got their genuine reactions.
Watching,
Yeah,
and I'll tell you, I'm glad you brought that up. One of the most interesting things, I had a party here once, years ago, and it was Walking Dead. I think it was a Walking Dead creep show party. Like, I invited both crews, and it was during COVID, so everybody was really keen to like get out and be human beings. So I had a full house, and we're upstairs in the movie room, and the dailies, like the outtakes from the chest burster scene, were playing in my movie room, and people were sitting there watching it. And I walked up and I said, when you watch these dailies, you would never imagine for a million years that that's the scene that they would have cut together, because you see the dailies and you see the tube of blood hitting Veronica
Yeah.
Cartwright, and how phony it looks, because it looks like somebody's literally aiming a hose at her. But when you cut that scene together and you put the sound effects and you use just the right snippets here and there, that to me, if you watch the outtakes of the chest burster scene, that is a master class in storytelling and filmmaking.
Right, because if you look at every element, at least from the alien part, it doesn't look great. Like it looks, if you just look at the little thing, just like kind of going through the table, it's obviously on a little track. It's all the simplest tricks in the world.
Yeah.
But cut together and the reactions is what sells it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up. See it. Greg, what have you got coming up that you want to talk about?
Well, we're currently working on season 2 of Dead City in Boston, which is the Negan and Maggie Walking Dead spinoff. I'm due to head off to Europe in August to shoot season 3 with Daryl Dixon, and we did Fallout, the effects for Fallout, which you can see. There's a lot of K&B, cool K&B stuff in there. And I got a lot of stuff brewing. We have a writer, and we're developing Swan Song, the Robert McCammon novel, as a series. And I'm producing 2 other movies that we're about to go out with. And setting up my first feature directing gig. So
that's awesome.
Lots and lots of fun stuff. And then John and I are going to do something together at some point soon. That's the one we're not allowed to talk about.
All right. Well, hopefully more to be revealed, and we're always hungry for more. So keep us fed.
Yeah, sure.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Do you have any socials you want to reference for people to find you?
I mean, I'm on Instagram once a year, so I don't know how exciting that is. But it's at Nicotero on Instagram. But I haven't posted much. It's too challenging for me.
All right. John?
Yeah, I'm sort of the same way, although I've got an Instagram and a Facebook account, and official John Harrison is what it is. You can find it on Instagram and stuff like that. But anyway, it's really great to be on the show. It's really great that you have this audience, and keep feeding it, Jason. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. All right. Well, that wraps up another episode of Dads from the Crypt.
Follow Dads from the Crypt on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or I will follow you to the grave. No, seriously, you really should watch. But be careful what you ask for. You may get it.